You're listening to the Iterators of the Imperium.
Hi, I'm MEZ, and I'm here with my lovely co-host Ryan, and you're listening to Season 3 of the Iterators of the Imperium podcast, the podcast in which Ryan is the expert on Warhammer 40K, and I am the noob trying to learn about the Warhammer universe. And as you guys can see, we have a virtual studio on our podcast for Season 3, but it is in flames, because we're talking about the traitors. So yeah, let's get into it. So Ryan, who are we talking about today?
You already know, man. There's only one man left.
I know, but still.
The man, the myth, the legend that is Magnus the Red.
Yes, sir. One of your favorite characters, I might add, you know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yes.
Yes.
So, I feel like we should just get right into this.
Yes,
You ready?
sir.
All right. So, for the sake of anyone new, as you know, Mez, in this episode, you are a little theoretical or metaphorical baby. Super baby, if you will.
I read one.
Yeah, a red one. You are perfectly, completely aware of the universe around you. You know who you are while you're being created.
Wait, I do?
Yeah, you do.
Oh, this is a... Wait, hold on. This is a change?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. You're aware of who your parents are. You're aware of the horrors that lurk around the galaxy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Magnus, the man himself, was aware of his own creation. He was aware from the moment he began to exist. Unlike any of his brothers.
That's a new thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like this is baffling me. Like we've had the same standard quotations intro for the last I don't know how many episodes, but damn, all right. A change in the scenery.
Oh,
I'd love
yeah.
to see it.
So, as per usual, the rest of this is pretty standard. It is between the year 700 and 800 of 30th millennia. Slaanesh has just been born, Eldar have been, ravaged, and the warp storms that were all over the galaxy have finally started to chill the hell out.
Yeah.
And back on Terra, our man, Big E, the Emperor himself, Jeff Bezos, if you will, has finally got everyone on the same page and is ready to go start crusading. But
yeah, our Emperor Elon Musk.
No, he's going to start the Mechanicum on Mars. I'm sure of it.
Oh, yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Aye. But none of that has anything to do with what we're doing today, because today we are talking about this planet called Prospero.
Ooh, it's kind of beautiful, you know?
It's quite cool. It is quite cool. Yeah. Now, do you want to know the most important thing about this planet?
Go on.
It's in the middle of nowhere.
Amazing.
Exactly. It's the best thing about this planet is it's the middle of goddamn nowhere, right? That's exactly what we were looking for in this planet. Just to give you an idea where it actually is. So this is a galaxy map. It's a bit more detailed than the ones we usually use, so it'll be a bit harder to read. But, so you can see all the segmentum lines where all the different areas of space are kind of sectioned off.
Yes.
Right.
Also, I should just really quick add, for the people watching on YouTube, you can actually, if you're using the mobile phone app and tablet, you can actually zoom if you pinch.
You can,
just letting
yes.
you know on the screen.
Yes.
Just FYI.
You can zoom on the web browser as well, actually.
But you can?
In the settings, there's a zoom bit, I'm sure. It's like where you can change the speed and stuff. I'm sure there's a zoom bit in there that I've seen a million times and never used.
Oh, never mind then. Yeah. You can do it on phones, like mobile first,
It'll be easier.
Continue,
Anyway,
it's fine.
So, obviously, Terra is that big weird symbol right at the dead center of that circle, right? Directly right of there, just into the next kind of boundary of space, that planet there is Prospero. So it's actually not that far away from Terra. There's just not a lot around it. So it's kind of a backwater.
And kind of hidden.
Well, yeah, kind of, yeah. Just no one's really interested, you know? No one really cares about Prospero.
Trust me, I know that feeling.
So,
sorry.
Back to this planet. Now,
Yes.
as far as the history for this world goes, it is a very convenient one. Right?
Okay.
Because the reason it is... no, not the reason it's a backwater. The reason the fact that it's like a middle-of-nowhere backwater planet is important is because it was chosen by design because it was the middle of nowhere, right?
Okay, yeah.
This planet is purely inhabited by psychers and mutants that didn't want to be harassed by humanity. So they all just found this middle of nowhere planet and lived on it, and that was it.
Oh.
Right? Because you got to remember, humans didn't like mutants, they still don't, and they really hated psychers. And we're back to that again. There was a bit in the middle where people were kind of cool with psychers, and now we hate them again. So, you know.
Circle of life.
Circle of life. So, yeah, that's why this planet was chosen, or that's why this planet is kind of convenient. Because the people that live there are already mutants, outcasts, and psychers.
Yeah.
So, because it's the middle of nowhere, it was able to become a haven for these people. And luckily enough, the only really bad issue is that there's a type of bug there, right? I say bug in the loosest possible term, right? Because it looks like a bug, but it's gigantic, right?
It's not a Tyranid. No.
It's not a Tyranid, no. It is one of these bastards. It's kind of
disgusting.
It's kind of like a magic wasp, I guess, or like a magic bloatfly, or botfly, whatever they're called. I think bloatfly is the name of them from Fallout, actually. Now that I think about it. Botfly. Anyway, the ones that lay eggs and stuff. Yeah, because it's like 2.5 meters long, so these things are gigantic for a bug.
What?
Yeah, it's 2.5 meters long, and they go around in swarms.
It's bigger than us. Holy shit. That's disgusting, by the way.
Yeah, swarms of these things going around that planet. It's really the only major downside to the planet is that it's basically infested with a plague of biblical locusts.
And it's red, like
yes.
Magnus, because he eats them, right?
Yes, that's why.
I'm just spreading rumors here. I'm just spreading rumors. I'm sorry.
I can't stress enough. I don't know. I don't know for a fact. I would hazard a fair guess. Magnus has never eaten one of these. Now, my biggest issue with these is not that they're disgusting. It's not the way that they reproduce, and it's not the fact that they're like made from the warp, right? All of which are pretty terrible. My issue with these is that the name is nigh on unpronounceable.
Oh, lay it on me.
I believe it's like Sycunian.
Sycunian?
Something like that, yeah. But there's like 7 E's in the name.
Bro, isn't that a YouTuber?
Probably. You're gonna get Sycuno.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same. Potato, you know? Don't come for me, by the way. If anybody's watching who's a big fan, don't come
Sycuno's going to turn up at your door and lay you out. How dare you call me a 2.5 meter long bug? But yeah, these are like warp creatures that inhabit the material realm, so they're pretty minging. But they are attracted to psychers because they will plant their eggs in the brains of psychers, and by the next day, the psycher will be dead.
Nice.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's disgusting. They are the worst goddamn things.
It sounds horrendous.
Yeah, and they inhabit, like, the wilderness and, like, ancient destroyed cities all over Prospero.
A lovely vacation place, I guess.
Yeah.
Vacation destination.
Because Prospero was obviously a haven for, like, psychers and mutants and stuff, the psychers that were there had, like, fully thrown themselves into the whole psycher thing. They weren't just trying to survive. They were trying to, like, explore it. They wanted to be psychers, right? They didn't want to just not be harassed. They just wanted to be psychers. So they were, like, scholars of sorcery. This was, like, a big thing.
This is like X-Men, you know?
A little bit.
A little bit like X-Men.
A little bit, yeah.
Also, I gotta say, Prospero, the world.
Yes.
It's a fitting name. Fitting name for what you're, telling me right now.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's a prosperous world.
It does go downhill rapidly.
It's Warhammer, of course it will.
Yeah. It goes uphill slightly for like 5 minutes, and then it just gone.
That's Warhammer for you.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. So we'll go back to Prospero. This is the planet you landed on, right?
Yes.
And your incubation pod hurtled down through the atmosphere and landed in the central plaza of basically the capital city called Tizca, which is also known as the City of Light.
Okay.
Right? It landed right in the middle of this like central plaza. So the people that found you saw it as like, I guess you were like a child of prophecy, right? They took it as a sign of something good coming, right? That you could only be good. What's the chances you would land in that exact spot? You know what I mean? It seems weirdly coincidental. So the people were like, no, this is a good one. This is a good one.
It has a purpose.
Yeah. It's lucky you landed here because, you're red and stuff. You're red, you have horns, stuff like that. Like, if you land on any other planet, they'd like toss you into a lake.
Probably, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Kill it with fire.
Yeah, that's about it.
Point like 6. Kill it with point like 6. New mutant bug. I don't know.
So the scholars of Tezca decided to take you in. You became like their ward, right? So as a group, they all kind of raised you to a degree. But once you kind of grew a bit, and they discovered you had an actual affinity for the warp, for as a psyker, the most prestigious, the famed scholar Ammon, right? This guy's like the top dog. He decided to take you under his wing and become your mentor because he saw real potential in you, right? So he's like your father figure now. Well, the best you've got, anyway. Now, under his kind of teachings, you learned basically everything they had to teach you about being a psyker. Right? All the different kind of specializations you can have and all that. You learned everything you could.
Yeah.
And once you had kind of mastered the training regimes, which you did pretty quickly, you just went on to ravaging their libraries for any information you could get about sorcery or the warp. You just kept going. You just wanted more and more knowledge. You just wanted to be like the most powerful being, but not for the sake of power, for the sake of knowledge. Yes. And for the record, if you're ravaging Prospero for knowledge, that is a hell of a lot of knowledge.
I could imagine. But for every single thing we've talked about Primarch, whether or not it's Magnus or the other guys, there's always the planet they land on and meet the native people, right? Or wolves.
Or wolves. Or
they
no one.
Or no one. But they learn like up to the ceiling of their skill gap. And then they break the ceiling. That's just a typical Primarch thing. So
well, it's they're so far beyond normal humans, It's as simple as that.
That's why. Yeah, and Magnus is no different.
Yeah.
So I could imagine, like, after he's already learned what there is to learn, he's gonna try and break that ceiling, go beyond.
That's it.
Go Super Saiyan 4.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So by the time you had kind of mastered your powers, you were like a young man, right? You had kind of mastered everything they had to teach you, and then a bit beyond that because you had done all your own learning, your own experimentation. But this all kind of culminates in a pretty weird event, right? So what psychers typically do is they will draw energy from the warp, from the immaterial realm, right? And then control it in whatever way and produce it into the material realm. So the psyker in question basically acts as a conduit for the energy from the immaterium into the material realm. They just kind of control the shape it takes as it passes through, right? But what you decided to do this day was look into the materium. Rather than drawing from it, you decided to kind of push yourself into it.
Yeah.
And that was something no one had ever done before on Prospero. And on that day, that singular event took you from being the most powerful psyker on that planet to possibly the most powerful in the galaxy. As far as you know. As far as you know. Right? That was the event that stepped your skills up a level. Because you now had an understanding beyond everyone else. Because you had seen it from the other side. Also, I'm going to show you what I would say is a very controversial picture of young Magnus. So this is young Magnus on Prospero. This comes slightly after the point we're at, but this annoys me to a great deal because he has one eye in this picture. He wasn't born with one eye, so he should have both of them at this stage, and that annoys me to no end. At this point in the story, you still have two eyes. I can't stress that enough. You weren't born a Cyclops. You gave up an eye.
I gave up an eye, plus I looked like a wuss.
Aye,
This image.
to be fair, look at the forearms on that man.
I don't give a shit. I'm not,
Wait,
eating
hold
spinach.
on. Think
You know
about
that guy?
Fulgrim and his Ponce robes. It was like a stick compared to this guy. This guy's a tank in a robe.
That's very true.
Yeah.
I'm just seeing red now, Ryan. I'm sorry.
know.
I'm angry. You like that?
That was good. That was good. Okay.
I like Magnus, by the way. Just to iterate here, I like Magnus.
I'm glad. I'd be very upset with you if you didn't, but
I know, you're a Magnus fanboy, like full blown.
So the next kind of major thing you did was those stupid fucking bugs were like the biggest issue your planet had, right? But
Yeah.
you were getting to a stage where you had kind of learned everything you could on this planet. So your interests or your priorities, I guess, started to slip a bit away from like the studying and the training and the practicing and all this to slightly different matters. And the matter you ended up focusing on for a bit was, these bugs have got to go. We want our planet back, right?
Yeah.
Now, we don't know exactly why you decided to do this. My reasoning, like the best guess I have for it, that you decided to go into full-blown war against bugs, was because they typically inhabited the ancient ruins of old cities that have been, ruins for decades. And based on stuff Magnus does later on, I would imagine he thought there might have been lost knowledge within those cities, and he wanted access to it. So you needed to get rid of the bugs. I feel like that was the logic behind it. But we don't know for sure. But, one way or another, you basically rallied all the Psychers and mutants and stuff on Prospero to go to war with these stupid bugs. And you fucking eradicated them.
Let's go.
Yeah. A couple of things come from this. The first thing is obviously you didn't do this without casualties. Some people did die, right?
Yeah, of course.
But I guess the best survivors of this war would go on to lead the cults that would become the cults of the Thousand Sons, right?
Yeah.
So the Thousand Sons, much like every other legion, have their own way of like naming their hierarchy and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, good example, right? Space Wolves, right?
Yeah.
The Space Wolves use very different names for their command groups within the Legion. So it's not just one big army of like 100,000 troops. It was 13 separate groups that all had their own leadership. And then they all answered to the Primarch, right? Most of the legions have their own one. And in this case, the Thousand Sons have a couple of different forms of this. So their kind of regiments are called fellowships, and each of them has a captain. But they also have what are called cults, right? And as a psyker within one of the legions, you can join one of these cults and specialize in what you do as a psyker, right? But that is irrelevant to the fellowship you're in. So in any given regiment of the Thousand Sons of troops, there will be people that are in all the different cults that specialize in all these different things. Just so you know, to give you an idea. At this point, the Thousand Sons aren't around, obviously. This is just on Prospero. But a bunch of the survivors of this war go on to become the leaders of these separate kind of schools of study. So Ammon, your dad, for lack of a better term, founded the cult of the Corvidae, which is a cult based around premonition. They're seers, they see the future.
Yeah.
A couple of people called Memphia and Scythega founded the Pyre, which is a cult about pyrokinesis. They control fire. Immelbin founded the Pavoni, which is a cult based on manipulating body chemistry. These guys are really cool. So Space Marines have the ability to adjust their own brain chemistry and stuff, like knowingly, right? They can choose to do it. But it's because they have extra organs and stuff put into them that allow them to put parts of their brain to sleep at a different time. So they never actually have to go to sleep for weeks on end. In case a war just lasts weeks or months or anything. They don't have to go sleep. But these guys use their psyker powers to adjust, like, I guess, body chemistry in much more profound ways. So they can adjust, like, adrenaline levels to certain parts of their body and stuff like that in very precise manners to make them faster, stronger, have better instincts, react faster. Like, whatever it needs for the situation, these guys can just adjust their body chemistry using magic to just push them far beyond their body's natural limits without ever doing themselves harm. It's quite cool.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's kind of cool, you know?
Yeah, it's essentially like a battle mage. Right? Like if you're... Hold on, what's the word? Why am I blanking things? If your Pyre are like your normal wizards that fire fire all the time, these guys are like your battle mages that just use the magic to enhance their own physical abilities to become better normal soldiers, which is very cool.
I like that.
Yeah. So a couple of people called Phanek and Thothmus founded the Athenaeans, which are all about telepathy. Atep founded the Raptora, which are a cult about telekinesis. It's not as simple as just throwing things with your mind and stuff like that. It comes down to like shielding and things like that, a lot of it. The Raptori are like incredible when it comes to protective arts. Which I will mention later. It's an important detail. But yeah, so these cults all came out of this. There was a couple other ones that turned up, and in current day I believe there's 9, but at the time these ones all turned up, created by people who survived this war alongside you.
Yeah.
So shortly after the war, you were made the leader of Prospero because you were so obviously beyond everyone else, right? It was stupid to pretend you weren't in charge. And in this position, you set out a decree that the cities of Prospero would be rebuilt, beginning with Tizca, which you rebuilt yourself using your own powers. Yeah. So you, like, redesigned and rebuilt an entire city using nothing but your psychic powers.
Cool.
Yeah. You built an entire city of white marble and glass. Typically, most structures were pyramids or big towers that all looked vaguely magical. Yeah. And when you were done, it was apparently a city of immense beauty. And interestingly, because you had designed it in such a way that not only was it perfectly organised, also just the archaeology of it, or not archaeology, the architecture of it, not archaeology. I suppose archaeology is accurate nowadays. Anyway, the architecture of it caused kind of background psychic feedback, which made everyone in the city really calm and happy all the time. Very cool.
That's nice.
Yeah, everyone was just really chill in this city because of the way you designed it.
I like that.
But right in the centre of the city, you built the Great Library of Tizca. Your goal was to consolidate all the knowledge that Prospero had on sorcery and the warp into one area, into one building, so that everyone had access to a full kind of what's the word? Encyclopedia, I guess, on these topics whenever they needed it. Properly organised to the details that they needed, rather than having to do what Magnus did, which was basically just read everything. They could go, I want to learn about Corvidae bullshit. I'll go with the Corvidae section, rather than just reading every book on the planet and having to figure out.
Yeah.
Luckily, you'd done that, so you could just like card catalog it all yourself. Now, of course, you were warned by Ammon about the dangers of delving too deeply into the warp, and you ignored him. As you would. I'll tell you now, Magnus's biggest flaw is thinking he knows best.
Oh, trust me, from what I know about Magnus, I know that.
Yeah. If anyone leaves this episode learning one thing, make it that. Magnus thought he knew best, and that was his downfall.
Yeah, it comes up around the heresy as well. But,
Yeah.
We'll come to that later.
Yeah. So it was not long after this point that the Emperor turns up, right? And I'm not going to bother staging it in some dramatic way. But the Emperor's shuttle lands within the great precincts of Tizca, and naturally you are called to meet him since you're the world's leader. When you meet him, you immediately hugged him as father and son and talked as if you had known each other for years. Because you had.
Okay. Yeah, I was well aware of my situation.
Yeah. The other thing, though, is once you really got a handle on your powers, you and Dad were just chatting through the warp telepathically for years.
Bruh.
Yeah, you knew everything that was going on.
When are you gonna come visit me, Daddy?
That's basically it. But
Essentially,
he didn't know exactly where you were, and you didn't know where you were in the grand scheme of the galaxy, like in comparison to him. So you couldn't tell him or anything like that. But it was once you started delving actually into the warp itself, he was able to sense your location. Because he does that as well. You two are like the only vaguely human people in the galaxy that literally just throw your soul into the warp for a laugh to go for a walk. So as soon as you did it, it was like, who the fuck's that guy? So he just knew where you were after that, which is cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you had known each other for years without actually knowing each other, if you get what I mean. So going forward from this, you are obviously, you're taken in by the Emperor, you know the deal, you've already agreed, it's fine. I'll show you what you look like as an actual Primarch. I don't know what the nipple horns are about, but whatever.
It's still a bit more cool.
It's definitely cooler.
From the wrong angle, Ryan, it looks like he has a mech suit on, but that's his real arms. a bit small.
That would be much funnier.
Like a T-Rex, like a T-Rex.
Magnus the T-Rex.
Grr. I'm dangerous, grr.
Oh. So, in your time kind of alongside the Emperor, you actually both explored the warp together, both like projecting your spirits into the warp together and exploring. Obviously, again, he warns you of the danger of doing this too much because, there are malign forces within the warp, so careful.
Yes.
But eventually, you return to Terra and you meet your Legion, the 15th Legion. The 1,000 Suns. This is what they looked like at the time. Yeah. Currently, after the heresy, they changed their armor to be like this kind of weird light blue color. It's very cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, back then they were crimson to match their dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Crimson King himself. So, you obviously, as you would expect, took it upon yourself to teach your sons the ways of the Psyker, and because they had inherited your gift, because they were made from you, so they had an affinity for psychic powers. Not all of them had them, but a pretty good number, significantly more than any other Legion. So you trained them. You taught them how to use their nonsense powers.
Yeah. And
you also raised up a bunch of the people from Prospero into Space Marines, which is typically what happens. Like Lorgar bringing his abusive dad along as a Space Marine.
Yeah.
So the ones that had founded the cults back on Prospero brought those cults into the Legion with them and ended up with like a leading role because of that, right? But the main one that changed is actually Ammon, who was obviously your dad. Because obviously he founded the Corvidae, but he was not the leader of the Corvidae anymore. When he was raised up, he became the first fellowship captain, which means he's your first captain. He's the first guy below you in the Legion's hierarchy. But he also became your equerry, so he became like your second hand, basically.
Yeah.
So he was like always beside you for whatever you needed. So the person running the Corvidae actually changed to a Marine instead, who would become your favored son. This was Azek Araman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, no. Ammon was not your first captain. He was the captain of the first fellowship. Azek Araman was also your first captain, so he was the one just below you.
Okay.
Ammon was still your right-hand man, but in the hierarchy, Araman was the guy just below you.
Yeah.
Right? Sorry, I had the orders wrong. Anyway. So you bring all the nonsense from Prospero into the Legion with you, basically, is the point I'm trying to get across. Now, there is a backstory for your Legion that occurred before you got here, right? And it's pretty harsh. So, buckle up.
Okay.
So, not only did your Legion inherit your psychic powers, they also inherited your, I don't know, I guess penchant for mutation. So around 10 years after the Great Crusade kicked off, obviously all the legions other than the Emperor's Children were out, crusading and stuff, just without their Primarchs, right? And around 10 years in, there is a sudden change within your legion, where many of the Legion Psychers suddenly become much more powerful, and a lot of them that weren't Psychers suddenly gained powers. Mm-hmm. But along with this came the flesh change. This is what the Legion refers to this mutation as. And I want to make it clear, it wasn't strictly afflicting Psychers. Anyone could get it, regardless of if they had powers or not. It was part of the gene seed. But what would happen is, randomly, your sons would start to develop, or kind of descend into mindlessness, and then would take on a more bestial form. Basically, they would just become a monstrosity. So I'll show you what a Marine looks like after the flesh change.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
That's some kind of demon.
Basically, yeah. It was like a kind of halfway point between Space Marine and Demon.
That's disgusting.
Yeah. So, obviously, when this started happening, the Emperor and the Sigillite and what are they called? The Selenites? Yes, the Selenites. They were like gene scientists that worked on all the Space Marines and stuff like that on Luna. Gene cults. They were gene cults. That's the term. Anyway, everyone that was reasonable to look into this looked into this, and the Sigillite had it in his head that this was some warp-based nonsense and was adamant about it. But the end result of all the experimentation and everything was, we can't fix this. We don't know why it's happening. The Legion obviously tried to fight it, like their apothecaries tried to fight it. Some people turned really quickly, some people felt the change before it started. They felt something like it was something growing under their skin. In those cases, they were treated with antivirals and stuff, which seemed to slow it down a little bit, but nothing stopped it and nothing cured it. So the Emperor and the Sigillite came to this end result that was, maybe getting their Primarch back will stop this. We don't know why it's happening, but maybe it's some kind of because they obviously knew a lot of them were Psychers, so maybe it's some kind of resonance that'll be cured if they get their Primarch back. Or maybe it'll have some kind of effect. Maybe he'll be able to help. We don't know. But it's the only thing we can think of, so we need to do this.
Can at least try.
Exactly. But getting you back didn't fix it. It was basically exactly the same. So you did everything you could to try and find a cure, right? You spent an immense amount of time looking for a cure for that. And you couldn't find one. And eventually, as time passed, you became so desperate that you turned to an entity within the warp, asking whatever was there to help. And you were offered a bargain. A simple enough bargain. This entity, whatever it may be, will use its power to cure your sons of the flesh change. In return, all it asks is one of your eyes.
And that is why you were so adamant before that he wasn't born a Cyclops.
Exactly.
Exactly mundo.
So, as any good father does, swapping one eye for the sake of, all of your children's suffering. Yeah, no problem. You gave up your eye happily. And for the record, the flesh change seemed to be cured. It stopped happening. So, win-win. Okay, well, no. Whatever, it worked, right?
If it works, it ain't stupid, Ryan.
That's it. Although, big imps would probably tell you otherwise.
Probably.
Yeah. So, back to crusading. Now that we've
Yes.
dealt with this nonsense, back to crusading. So, obviously, you were going through the galaxy, ransacking planets and stuff, and Prospero was not unique in the fact that they had psychers living as a normal population. So, whenever you came across a planet that also had psychers on it, you would do everything you could to gain knowledge from them, because they're gonna know stuff that Prospero doesn't. They'll know something at least, right? So you started gathering all this knowledge together and decided you were gonna make one gigantic tome of all the knowledge you could ever possibly gain about the arcane. And this was the Book of Magnus, which you carried at your belt forever.
Yeah.
For the record, you just carry this book around. I feel like it's a backup weapon at this stage. Like, if you ever don't have your big crazy Kopesh, you'll just hit them with a book. In time to come, the rest of the legions obviously had been kind of meeting in like similar cultures and creatures that were of the warp or influenced by the warp. And this led to a kind of building dismay among the legions in regards to the warp and psychers and stuff. And this is what led to the Council of Nicaea, which is when the Emperor decreed a ban of librarians, which were sanctioned psychers within the legions, and a ban on psychers overall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, now we get to the fun part. The Fault of Chaos.
Amazing.
Great times.
What we have been waiting for.
Yeah. So, after the Council of Nicaea, you returned to Prospero. And your plan was to continue your experiments in secret, right? And as you usually do, because your experiments at this stage, a lot of it was literally exploring the warp as a spirit, basically, astral projecting yourself into the warp. And when you did it this time, you were greeted with visions of the future. To a degree, you were actually more or less greeted with visions of what is currently happening. But this is when you saw Horus in this bullshit chaos ritual with that arsehole Erebus, and him seeing these visions of the future, which you also saw. So I guess you kind of did. And, you saw, like, what was happening with Horus and the Primarchs and the roles that they would all play and the deaths to come.
Yep.
So you attempted to sway Horus away from what was going on. So you projected yourself into this kind of dream state he was in, which we covered back in the Horus episodes and the Horus Heresy episodes, where you appeared within these dreams and tried to explain to him what was happening, that they were manipulating him. And he basically told you to sod off, he would make his own decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a bitch.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So since you had failed, you were like, right, well, I've only got one choice left. I've got to warn Dad. I've got to warn the Emperor, right? If I can't stop it from happening, at the very least, I can get Dad to get over there quick and slap him about before he has a chance to do any of the evil stuff.
Yep.
So the main issue of what's going on in this situation right now is that there are still some warp storms in the galaxy. And unfortunately, one has formed which will prevent you from sending, like, just a normal message to Terra, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, sod it, astral projection's the only way. So you send yourself into the warp and start flying towards Terra. Along the way, you find a webway tunnel that leads directly to the Imperial Palace. And you're like, shit, shortcut. Time is of the essence, I better take this. So you take this shortcut, not knowing the Emperor is currently trying to build this tunnel.
Yep.
But when you get to the end of it, the exit into the Imperial Palace under the throne, it is heavily warded, and you start smashing against it to try and get through. And you can't get through. You can't break these wards. You're not powerful enough. And in this moment of kind of desperation, a voice, like, from nowhere offers you the power you need. Thinking you know best, you go, sure. And this thing gives you the power you need to break through these wards. And when you do, you spill out into the throne room, and so do a shitload of demons.
Yep.
Obviously, the Emperor is incensed by this and will not listen to anything you say and banishes you from Terra. Fun times.
Magnus really bottled it. He really bottled it. Honestly.
Yeah, he done goofed.
Slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah.
Magnus.
I feel like he would have been better off just getting in a ship and going and strangling Horus to death.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Like, there's like a million better. He could have just went and immolated the planet that Horus was on from orbit. Like, there were a lot of better options. But Magnus thought he knew best. You know.
And that's the takeaway from today's episode.
Yep. So, by the way, right, that like breach in the webway has a name now. It was named Magnus's Folly, which I think is hilarious. But in response to all of this, the Emperor does as anyone would, or as any good lord would, I guess. He dispatches his dogs to bring back his quarry. So he sends Leman Russ and the Space Wolves to go get you and bring you back to Terra to face trial, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, along the way, because Horus is now aware that you know what he's doing, that he's turning evil, on their journey, Leman Russ and his pet wolves, they get a message from the War Master saying the Emperor has changed his mind, right? Mm-hmm. What he wants Magnus dead. You're supposed to just go and burn Prospero to the ground. And so we come to the burning of Prospero. The aptly named burning of Prospero. So
it's like you said, Ryan. Like they could get a good time. That it goes one step forward and 2 steps back.
It's like one step forward and then shoved off a cliff, more like.
Oh, actually, you know what? Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So now we come to the burning of Prospero properly, which is pretty harsh, by the way. So, since you knew the Emperor was going to send someone to come and get you, because you knew that what you had done was illegal, for lack of a better word, right? You knew you were going to be put to trial for this. So you told your kids, look, lower all the defenses, we're not attacking anyone, someone's going to come and get me, and I'm willing to face that. I know what I did was wrong, right? If we put up a fight, you'll all end up punished too. We're not doing that, right? Turn all the defenses off. So that's what they do. Didn't know the Space Wolves were now coming for killing rather than arresting.
Yes.
So they're expecting Leman Russ and that to turn up in orbit, land, and Russ will come and slap some shackles on Magnus and drag him off the planet back to Terra.
Yeah.
It's not what happens.
Trying to assassinate him. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, what actually happens is Leman Russ rocks up in orbit and starts bombing the crap out of the planet, which has no defenses up. Obviously, you realise, shit, something's changed. So you fire all the defences back up and start firing back. And then pretty soon there's a full-scale invasion and a ground war going on as well. Now, knowing things have changed, you grab your first captain, Ahriman, and you go, look, we're gonna do a ritual, right? I've got a plan, but I need you to do this. So he takes him off the field, away from his command, to run this ritual, right? And they set it all up, but then he goes, look, I have to go. I can't be here for this ritual, so I have to entrust this to you, my favoured son, right? Mm-hmm. I am entrusting my safety and the safety of all of the 1,000 sons, of everyone on Prospero, to you personally, right? You have to do this.
Pressure.
It is. But that's how much he trusted him. That's how important Ahriman was to him. He knew he could trust him with this. But the reason he can't be there is because Russ is coming specifically for Magnus. If he's involved in the ritual at the time that Russ gets there, the ritual definitely fails and they all definitely die. So he has to be somewhere waiting for Russ to take his attention away from him, from this ritual. So he goes and he waits for him. Eventually, after full-scale wars broke out all over the planet, and the planet, like, they are literally murdering everyone they see, burning the libraries, everything. The whole planet is being burnt to the ground intentionally to get rid of all of the psyker bullshit.
Yeah.
And eventually you end up face to face with Ross and start leathering each other. The thing is, obviously, you don't want to kill your brother, but he wants to kill you.
Yeah.
It's very much an I told you so moment, because he did tell you to stop being a fucking psyker, and you never listened, because you knew better. Here is possibly my favourite moment, which is kind of the end point of the fight, which is when Ross picks you up above his head and snaps your spine over his knee.
Bruh.
Yeah.
Naughty boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after he snaps your spine over his knee and throws you to the ground as limp garbage, he intends to finish you off, but right before he is able to make his killing blow, Ahriman completes the ritual, and all of the Thousand Sons disappear from Prospero at once.
Yeah.
Now, there is a bit of discrepancy here, because I'm pretty sure Ross actually does land the killing blow, but at the exact same time that the ritual completes.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it literally happens in the exact same possible smallest moment of time.
So they intersect.
Yes. Essentially, that's, as far as I'm aware, that is how it happens. Because you all end up on a planet within the Eye of Terror. Technically within the warp, right? This is the planet of the sorcerers, right? Which is obviously now a haven for your people. But this was the point of the ritual, was to teleport all of you into the warp. But it takes you to a planet within the warp, within the Eye of Terror.
Yeah.
So you're all safe. But the thing is, you are no longer a physical being. You are purely a spiritual being, because your physical form was destroyed by Russ. Which is why I'm under the impression that he did land the final blow, but you were still taken away. So
yeah, my soul was.
Yeah, exactly. So your physical form is gone. And there's a kind of another weird part goes on here, right? Because you weren't wholly taken as a spirit. There is like the largest section of your spirit is there, but other sections of it splintered off and are scattered all across the galaxy. And they each represent a different part of who you are.
Yeah.
Right? But the largest section of you is still on this planet of the sorcerers with your sons.
Yeah.
But it's kind of falling apart. It's not strong enough to hold itself together. It's not like enough, basically, to maintain itself.
To rest. Yeah, it needs to rest.
Yeah, he kind of needs the rest of him put together. He needs to be...
Yeah, to sustain.
Yeah. So Ahriman goes off to find these extra parts, because he's obviously, you know, your best guy. So him and a bunch of your dudes go get the rest of the parts. And for the record, you are so happy to be here, because this place is what you've always been kind of craving. It's a place where you have limitless access to the warp, which means basically limitless power, and you are free to do whatever you want. But it's also a chance for you to get revenge on the Emperor for betraying you and sending Ross to kill you. You gotta remember, you don't know that Horus was involved in this. You think the Emperor sent Ross to kill you, not Horus.
Yeah.
Obviously, Ross also thinks that the Emperor sent him to kill Magnus, not Horus. He thinks Horus was just a messenger. So they both went into that fight thinking that the other one wanted them dead because of the Emperor. Interestingly. Yeah. But neither are actually true. Anyway. So this place represents a chance for you to get that revenge against the Emperor. So you start formulating plans as Ahriman goes off to find the other parts of you. So the fragments of Magnus turn up all over the place and play like critical roles in the heresy. Interestingly enough. So, remember how the Khan was kind of like on the fence about what was going on for a really long time?
Yeah.
Eventually he gets to Prospero long after it's been burnt and is like wandering through the wreckage of Tizca. And he finds this like astral projection of Magnus, and it's one of these shards. And it tells him like basically he has to pick a side. Like he has to pick a side now. And this is the thing that makes the Khan and the White Scars choose which side they're going to be on. It's this fragment of Magnus just like berating him in the ruins of his own planet. Another one turns up on a Salamander's ship, like on one of their captain's like flagships, and basically guides them through a warp storm so they don't get destroyed, and then passes on some knowledge which leads to the resurrection of Vulcan, because Vulcan has died at this point. So with the information that Shard of Magnus passes on, the captain ends up sacrificing himself to bring back Vulcan. So the Shards of Magnus play a lot of pretty essential roles in the heresy.
They definitely have a big role
Yeah.
to play. It's also good for storytelling.
It is, yes.
It's like very handy if there's something you can't explain. Oh, Magnus' shorts, right? I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, it's genuinely like a slightly better version of going, a wizard did it. Well, how the hell did that happen? A wizard did it.
Yeah.
So, obviously, Ahriman needs to go find these shards. The way it happens is that him and Amon and a bunch of other guys go back to Prospero, and Amon briefly turns into a form of Magnus. He, like, embodies him for a bit and passes on the knowledge of where a bunch of the fragments are. And they end up gathering back together 4 of the 5 they find the locations for. And they bring them all back together with Magnus. And the 5th section that they found out the location for but didn't get is on Terra, which is why they didn't go get it. But now that he's got 4 of these 5 fragments back as part of his kind of his self, he is no longer falling apart and he's basically back to full strength.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you know the fragment on Terra? It contains the good part of Magnus.
Oh,
it's like
so
the
never gonna
morally
be-
good part of him that's there.
Oh no! So he's just
So he's just vaguely evil, but still as strong as he was before. Which,
That's a lethal combination.
it does explain why he was so hell-bent on the revenge part of this whole thing.
Yeah, instead of thinking logically, because it's just, Angron 2.0.
But magic.
But oh god.
Magic Angron. So, it was around this point, obviously, Magnus wants the extra shard of him back. And to do that, he needs to get into the palace. So he's like, hey Horus, I'm going to turn up for your muster and bring my troops. Let's go siege this place. So he just turns up for the muster at Ulanor and joins them for the siege.
Yeah.
Now, during the siege itself, you participate as you would be expected. You're on the battlefield throwing fireballs and your troops are shooting people and stuff, right? Pretty standard, like, heresy siege stuff.
Yeah.
But once the traitors' attack on the Saturnine Gate fails, that's when you set about your plan, right? You basically fling a spaceship into the western wall of the palace to make a hole. And you are repulsed, for lack of a better word. You are attacked by a group of space wolves, right? A pack of space wolves who try to fight you off, right?
Yeah.
You were never trying to, like, fight your way in. You just needed a way to sneak in. Because you and a few of your sons disguised yourselves as blood angels and just wandered in during the chaos. So that's fun.
See. Yeah.
So you make your way through the palace, still pretending to be blood angels. Weirdly enough, there are a bunch of civilians at one point who are going to be hit with a phosphex grenade and basically just melt them, and you save them.
Yeah.
Which is odd, considering you didn't have the good part of you. Just, suspect. Anyway, but
A little bit.
yeah, but you then progress on further through the palace and down into the tunnels under the palace, which will lead up into the throne room. While making your way through the tunnels, you eventually come out into this, like, underground lake cavern. And standing by the shores of this lake are Malkador the Sigillite and this woman called Sureka, Olivia Sureka. Olivia? It's pronounced funny. It's got an A at the start, rather than an O, whatever. So these two are standing by the lakeside, and Malkador asks you to play a game of Regicide with her. Regicide is just chess, for the record. Right?
Nice.
Yeah. So you start playing, and along the way, Malkador is just chatting with you. He's obviously trying to sway you to his side, right?
Yeah.
But as the game goes on, and he kind of keeps going with it, eventually he lets slip something he would be better off having not said. He lets you know that the good shard of you, the kind of remaining shard that you came here for, is already bound into a person. So you can't get it. It's not there for you to reclaim. So you immediately fly off the handle and murder the sigilite.
Damn.
Yeah. So you're now enraged and just march off into the throne room.
Okay.
Yeah. So you get to the throne room, and when you almost get there, this like astral projection representation thing of the Emperor, who is calling himself Revelation, turns up. This is like basically just an old man. No, it's not. It's an old man. Revelation isn't an old man. It's a young man. Sorry. The Emperor uses this representation of himself, this particular guise of himself, in a book called The Last Church. Yeah. Which is possibly my favourite book from 40k. Because it's like an hour and a half long, and all it is the Emperor turning up at the last church on Terra and having a chat with a priest. Yeah. And at the end of it, the church is burnt down. But it's quite cool, because the Emperor takes the guise of this person called Revelation. And just has a normal chat with the priest, just to get to know him, basically, before he burns the last church down. He just wanted to get to know the guy. So it's this representation of the Emperor turns up before Magnus, as he walks like the kind of last bit towards the throne room. Yeah. Eventually, Magnus just kills that illusion, and then charges up his staff to kill the Emperor as well, who's sitting on the golden throne with his eyes closed, looking kind of catatonic. Yeah. And before you can make the final strike to just kill the Emperor right then and there, out of nowhere, here comes Vulcan flying down from the rafters like fucking John Cena. And then a bunch of his like elite troops come out of nowhere, and the space wolves that attacked you at the gate or at the breach in the wall earlier all turn up as well. So your sons all start fighting the normal space marines, and you and Vulcan set about each other. But before your fight really kicks off, the Emperor suddenly opens his eyes, and as he does, you find yourself just floating in the void alongside him as your astral projection forms. The way that you two used to go explore the warp together. Yeah. And in this state, you see like humanity's empire expanding and rising all across the galaxy, and capturing the last planet in the name of mankind. And there's a lot of stuff goes with this. So there's the whole part of like you and the Emperor getting to explore all of the mysteries of the galaxy forever, unimpeded. And like, I think you end up taking the role on the throne, powering the webway forever, but in eternal bliss because of it. Stuff like that. Yeah. And you leading this new legion that the Emperor was crafting for you. And he explains that this could all still happen. This could be the future. This actual good future that the Emperor wanted. This could all still happen, even from where they are now. But it would be if Magnus turned back to joining the Emperor, the two of them would like eradicate the traitor legions from the galaxy and then go back to the Crusade. Yeah. But the only price you had to pay was eradicating your legion, because the flesh change is a sign of corruption, which they cannot expel from them, so they can't be allowed to continue. So if you agree to give up your legion, then you can rejoin, and you can be father and son again. You can have this good future for everyone, other than the traitors.
Yeah, yeah.
Fuck those guys. The two of you would have went hand in hand and melted them all. But that price was too high. You would not sacrifice your sons. Everything you've done so far has been for your sons. So you weren't going to give them up. So again, you try to strike the Emperor. And when you do, the illusion fades and you are locked weapon to weapon with Vulcan. Of course, you start kicking the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
And you almost kill Vulcan, right? Because you're magic and powerful. Unfortunately, one of the Space Marines that are there, a guy called Barak Zytos, basically throws himself at you and sacrifices himself to allow Vulcan to get the upper hand and basically pummel you to death.
Oh, God.
Yeah. But as you are, being beaten to death, knowing death is soon at hand, you accept a bargain that has been offered to you all along. It's the same entity that offered you power to break through the wards of the webway.
Oh, God.
The same one that offered to cure your sons in exchange for your eye now offers you a chance at revenge. And you accept. And in that moment, you turn fully to chaos and are banished from the Imperial Palace by the anti-demonic wards that the Emperor holds up.
Yeah, that he set up, yeah.
Yeah. And you find yourself back on the planet of the Sorcerers. Now, as a demon Primarch, standing much taller, with gigantic wings and cloven hooves instead of feet.
Yeah.
And you're obviously immensely more powerful now.
Yeah.
But this is the moment you are reborn as the demon Primarch of Tzeentch.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yep. So, you obviously want your revenge and you're an absolute unit now. So, you make your way back through the warp, through the webway, and begin to enact a ritual to steal the power from the Emperor's wards. So that demons can get closer into the palace, giving the traitors a much greater advantage. Because you got to remember, even as the traitors were pushing forward, the demons could only go so close to the center of the palace. So as the troops pushed forward, at a certain point, the demons couldn't follow them. But Magnus, doing this ritual, made the wards weaker, so the demons could get much further in, giving the traitors a greater advantage for pushing forward.
Yeah.
So you stay in the webway doing this crazy ritual. And after some time, again, Vulcan stands before you. The Sigilite, now resurrected, sent Vulcan into the webway to find you and put an end to your ritual. Put an end to you once and for all. And as he stands before you, he swings his hammer and hits you, and it just goes clean through you. And he realizes it's a fucking illusion standing in front of him. He realizes pretty quick, you are basically just behind the illusion, behind a shield that you are holding up while also doing the ritual. So he basically just goes, oh, this is really handy, because you are exhausted and totally stressed out from running this ritual and a magic shield at the same time. So he just starts pummeling the shield with his hammer until it breaks, and basically your concentration does at the same time. And you are fucking exhausted, so you're in very little state to fight, even though you are massively more powerful than you were the first time.
Yeah.
Because what you've been doing is extremely strenuous work. So Vulcan just starts taking advantage of your exhausted state and starts battering the crap out of you with his hammer. So you decapitate him with your Kopesh, that big crazy sword.
Oh.
You just cut his head off.
Well then.
Yeah. Thing is, Vulcan's an Eternal, so pretty soon he comes back to life and just starts hammering you again. So you set him on fire and burn him to death. And then he comes back to life and starts hammering you again. So you rip the air out of his lungs and suffocate him. And he comes back to life. And he keeps doing this. So you start preparing a ritual, a new spell, as you kind of go through this game of murder and reincarnation over and over and over again. And eventually, you activate this spell. The spell is designed to tear Vulcan apart at a genetic level, which will nullify the fact that he is genetically an immortal. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like a last-ditch attempt. Maybe this'll get him. Right? And as the spell activates, he starts literally crumbling apart, like in the Avengers with a snap. He starts like turning to dust in front of you. And as he notices this happening to him, he just throws all of his strength into one last swing and smashes your head into pulp as he like falls apart. And so, Vulcan is dead, and your form is destroyed, and you are banished back into the warp. And that is the last part of the role you play in the heresy. That is like your official death as far as the heresy is concerned. You don't actually die, you just go back to the planet of the sorcerers and start dicking around there. Yeah. And we're not going to go any further than that with Magnus' story, because the rest of this story is best told as an individual episode, but there's a lot more to it. So I think that's going to be a large part of the Thousand Suns episode in the next season.
Yeah.
So, for the time being, that is just a part of the tragedy of Magnus the Red.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Such a good story. Such a good story.
Also, I forgot to show you this. It's Magnus fighting Vulcan.
Okay.
It's fucking cool.
That's some cool art, man.
Yeah. It's quite unfortunate for Magnus that when he's that particular height, Vulcan is the perfect height to speedbag his testicles.
Oh, for God's sake.
Imagine that guy swinging a hammer and it's just straight into your gut. You would just crumble to the ground.
No, you could just kick him like a football.
Just punt him. Just yeet. Clean through the webway.
So, Ryan, where is Magnus the Red on the tier list currently?
So, Magnus the Red is second in S tier. So, he's second on the whole list.
Yes.
Yes.
And you know what?
What?
He stays there.
That's fair. I knew he wasn't going to end up above Sanguinius.
No. But the thing is, I think those are the two ones that I like the most.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, they're both in S tier.
Of course, that's obvious. Now, my original plan for this was to redo this at the end of the last episode of this season, which would be now, because at the moment you've been swapping them all around each other as you thought one was better than the other. But I feel like now that you know all of their stories, I feel like this list might end up a bit different if we were to do it fresh. So what do you think? Do you want to do it?
To be honest, no. Because I feel like I have a good representation of what it is now. And you can clearly see the people that I prefer over the others that I mainly, not despise, but I mainly tilt more towards the loyalists than the traitors. I think they have better stories. That might just be up to, personal preferences. However, still, you can argue that, Magnus being a traitor is in S tier. That doesn't really make sense. But that's because I like him on a personal plan.
Or Horus on A tier.
I think especially the last tier there, I think it's actually quite representative of what I... Yeah.
You think it's accurate?
I think it's pretty accurate, yeah. Long story short, yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's a pretty good way to leave it then. I feel like that's a solid point. So, for the record, in the next season, I don't know if I'm going to do the tier list again, but if I am, it's going to be Legion-based rather than Primarch-based, which will be fun. It'll be fun. But the last thing I really need to say in this episode is this is the last episode of the season, so we are going to have a short break before we start up season 4. What? I know, shit's crazy, right?
Man, we should pat ourselves on the shoulder and say 3 seasons.
3 seasons.
I'm actually 3 seasons of Warhammer 40K. Let's go.
And there's so many more to go because we've barely scratched the surface.
Yes, sir. We will retire in season 50, though.
Because we'll be about 50 by then.
Exactly.
We'll just pass it on to our kids to take over.
Oh, God. It's going to be a legacy thing now.
It might be. I feel like...
Man, we are the Iterators.
How about this, right?
I am the Sigilite. Yeah?
Side idea for a podcast. Side podcast, right? Just our pets. So they take over. It's a cat in front of a camera, just like, right? It's confused. What time?
Well, I don't really have a pet, but I could make it like a socket puppet.
Yeah, that'll
You
work.
know? Like a sock puppet.
You make a sock puppet. I'll just sit
AI.
and pantomime my cat around, and we'll do the same thing we usually do.
Honestly,
Won't
the
even
set-
pretend about quality.
The sad part is people would probably tune into that just for the meme. You know what I mean?
It'd be worth
Now
it.
AI is gonna take over, Ryan. AI is gonna take over.
We're gonna have to be like Community and start doing special episodes where we do shit like that. One episode just randomly is just a cat doing the episode instead.
For God's sakes. I'm down.
Yeah,
I'm down.
but
But yeah, Ryan, do you want me to round out? Well, this season.
I think
not just
that's
this
about
episode?
it. Yeah, I've not really got much more to say about the wonder that is Magnus the Red.
Damn. Well, that does it for this, not episode, but season of Iterators of the Imperium podcast. It has been me, MEZ, and Ryan, and it has been a pleasure
It has.
iterating for you guys. We will see you in season 4. Take care and peace.
Bye.